average Korean is actually atheist, but it is undeniably clear that there is very strong Christian influence in the country right now, which I personally think is a little bit sad. Having grown up Christian, I find Buddhism to be a much more mature practice than Christianity. I attended a meditation retreat last year. During one of the sessions, we heard a story about the Buddha. There was a young woman that very desperately wanted to have a child. She finally gets the kid, but little girl gets sick and then she dies. Mother is obviously distraught. Her entire hopes and dreams have just been crushed. She hears that the Buddha is coming, so she goes up to the Buddha and she says, "I've heard that you can do miracles. My baby girl is very sick. She won't wake up. And people around me are saying that she's dead, but I don't believe it." The Buddha, filled with compassion for this woman, he says, "I want you to go bring me back a handful of mustard seeds from one of your neighbors. It has to come from a household where no one has died." She runs off, goes knocking at the first door. When the neighbor opens up, she says, "Can I have a handful of mustard seeds?" "Sure, I can give you a handful of mustard seeds." Mother remembers, wait, but first, did anybody in your household die? The neighbor says, "Well, actually, yeah, 2 months ago, we buried my father." He goes, "I can't take the mustard seeds. Sorry." Moves on to the next house, knocking again. The neighbor says, "Sure." Is about to give her the mustard seeds, and she asks the same question. "About a year ago, we had to bury my sister." She goes knocking on door after door, talking to neighbor after neighbor, who all gave her the same answer. "Someone in our family died." After this repeated exposure to people that have experienced that loss, the mother realizes, I'm not special. My pain isn't different from other people who've lost their loved ones. So she returns to the Buddha. She is able to bury her child, to mourn the loss, and then move on with her life. I couldn't help thinking about a very famous Bible story that I grew up learning in church. Jesus is approaching a town. He has heard that there is a girl that's very sick, on the brink of death. By the time he arrives, the child is already dead. Jesus says, "The child is not dead, she is only asleep." Of course, she comes back to life. He resuscitates a girl from the dead. It's no surprise that Christianity is way more popular than Buddhism. What is the easier religion to swallow? The one that teaches you your suffering is special, therefore God is going to give you a miracle. Even if someone else doesn't get it, you could be the one to get your dead child back. Or the religion that says your suffering is not special. Everybody goes through pain. It's the acceptance of that pain that gives you true freedom from suffering. When you can stop obsessing over your own problems, that's when you can open yourself up to connection. You can develop compassion for yourself and for others, understanding that there is no us versus them. It is all us. We are all connected through our human experience.
And this is one of the reasons why the philosophy of Buddhism, and that's what I mean, the philosophy of Buddhism is a more mature philosophy than Christianity, because it doesn't give you that coping mechanism that some type of miracle is going to happen to you, which many Christians often look for. They look for some type of miracle to happen for them, whereas everybody else will go through the suffering. Give you an example, and it just happened this morning. So this morning, I happened to catch on YouTube this song by a young lady on America's Got Talent, Nightbird. Had never seen it before. Happened in 2022. This young lady had cancer. She came on to America's Got Talent, told them her situation, sang a beautiful song that she wrote herself called "It's Okay" or "Okay," and it was very moving for me because in and around that same time frame, well, a few years before that, actually, uh, as many of you know, a dear friend of mine who came and lived with me for about 3 months died of pancreatic cancer. So, of course, well, not of course, but of course for me, uh, all those emotions came up. And I found myself sitting there, weeping for a little while over the loss of my friend, the loss of this young girl, Nightbird, who sang this beautiful song. And then I saw that video. And that video reminded me of that Buddhist teaching that he said that he was talking about. And it's not so much that you're not special, but it's more that life happens, and life happens to everyone. We're all going to lose someone. We're all going to have things that happen to us in our lives that we don't particularly care for. We all are going to go through some type of what the Buddhists call dukkha, which is suffering. But it is how we handle that suffering that matters. You see, most of the Christian teachings is that a person, uh, if you go through some type of suffering, that was God's will. But you're always looking for some type of miracle to bring you out, some type of miracle to happen to you. Because whether it's the Roman soldier who came to Jesus, the woman whose child was had demons in them, or the man tied to the rock who had legions, that some type of miracle is going to happen for you. And that people don't necessarily deal with all the different things that happens in life. If you live long enough, you are going to go through a lot of things. I've went through a child drowning, but resuscitated. But for that time frame, I thought that my oldest child was gone, while I had another child sitting in an incubator. And so I went through a time frame of suffering. Now, some people might have said that, oh, and people did actually at the time, said that God saved my child because they happened to be a nurse who was at the pool. But it wasn't. It was just life and how life happens. But Christianity gives you this coping mechanism to make you think that all of a sudden some type of miracle is going to come and bless you because you believe in this God. But every Christian has experienced a type of suffering where there were no miracles, that you lost something or something happened. And that thing that happened isn't because some God allowed it or some God uh, determined that that was how life is going to be. It is because that's just how life is. And so to have a close friend of mine die of cancer, to have a family member who currently has cancer, it's just part of life, part of living. One day my mother will be gone. My father is already gone. My grandparents are already gone. It's just part of life. And although those things affect me deeply, it is not for me to sit and dwell upon them and change how I respond to life and live life, but it's just to continue to live life at its fullest, remembering those people, dealing with the emotions, and moving on to live life uh, in the best way that I possibly can. I've told you before, I have a friend of mine. Every year, the anniversary of her mother's death, she goes into this huge depression. It's been over 20 years. And she still goes into this huge depression because she can't let go of the suffering that she's dealt with as far as losing her mother. But when you don't let go, when you don't move on, all you're doing is stagnating your life. And Christianity doesn't teach you how to move on. Christianity gives you these ideas of everybody goes to heaven, no matter what they did and how they lived their life. If you love them, that's where they went. If you idolize them, that's where they go. But the philosophy of Buddhism teaches you that this is a common experience, and everybody has those common experiences. And until you learn how to deal with each one of those experiences, you are stuck in this mud of thinking that you're special and that certain things shouldn't happen to you or won't happen to you. And that's just simply immature and an immature religion for people to expect these types of things. There are Christians right now who are going through molestation. There are Christians who are going through cancer. There are Christians who are going through spousal abuse and all types of suffering. But Christianity makes you think that God's supposed to come down and fix all these things. And if he doesn't, then it's just his will. And the worst thing that they tell you is that your suffering is done for testimony to God. In the same way that when they asked Jesus, who whose sin caused this boy to be born blind? And he said that, oh, it was so that God's power can be revealed. That's a horrific story, that a child was born blind, went through his blindness through his whole life, and he only went through it begging on the streets so that Jesus can one day come and heal him so he can show God's presence. That's evil. That's wrong. Instead of people just dealing with the fact that a child is born a certain way, a child has certain deficiencies, instead of just adapting to them, working with them, and living through them. No, we look for these miracles so that we can be alleviated of the suffering. But suffering is part of life, and how you deal with it makes all the difference in the world. So always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey.